AI in education, personalized learning and future-ready skills. The panelists are Dr. Jeffrey Ditela, Specialist, Artificial Intelligence at Telkom, South Africa. Professor Kat Yassim, from the Department of Education Leadership and Management at the University of Johannesburg. Professor A.J. Smith, Department of Marine Biology at the University of the Western Cape. Dr. Nix McCline, Head of Research and Postgraduate Studies at Eduvos. The moderator is Alexander Leibner.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have the privilege of opening this panel discussion today, and after listening to today's opening addresses and panel discussion so far, boy, am I relieved to know that I'm in the right place today. For context, I'm Nix McCline from Eduvos, South Africa's fastest growing private higher education institution, where I'm responsible for driving research for real-world impact. I'm also an advocate for the meaningful and ethical use of digital technology, especially with regards to the protection of vulnerable groups. As you are all aware, the 2023-2024 AI surge, supercycle, ChatGPT hype, name it what you will, shook higher education institutions. We were noticing that students were producing standard essays or assignments with the help of AI tools, but the content of these assignments were lacking in their real-world contexts, knowledge, and lived experiences. They were missing heart. If anything, the outputs were Western interpretations of local and regional lived realities. There was a critical flaw here, and it led us to ask, whose future is AI preparing us for? In our critical engagement with this question, we developed a technocritical framework. While others were leaning into the hype, the overly optimistic, or banning AI outright, the techno-pessimistic, we instead opted for a critical, careful, and curious approach, what we have since named a technocritical framework. This framework consists of 5 pillars: participatory design, critical thinking, contextual learning, ongoing dialogue, and most importantly, an ethics of care. This truly underpins everything we do in our response to, our use of, and our future development and planning around AI integration, because we must always come back to the question, whose voice is missing? In response to AI, our assessments are now designed to be inclusive of local examples, such as essay case law or the use of essay economic data, and bringing that back to students' contexts, bringing their voices into their responses. They can use AI, but they must incorporate their world into their response, and they must cite AI too. We emphasize accountable, responsible, and transparent use of AI. Our framework is about arguing that AI should be shaped intentionally and carefully. Any personalization of AI tools must be contextualized, whether that is culturally, linguistically, even economically, noting the digital divide. And that our students ought to be active and critical users of AI, not simply adopting the tools passively. To enable our students in this way, we are currently working towards a means of equipping them with future-ready skills, skills that include AI literacy, critical engagement, and as always, bringing it home, being locally and regionally relevant. This may look like, let me only pick a few in the interest of time, critical engagement, having students critique and evaluate AI outputs for their relevance, asking what is the real-world impact. And to get here, what we all need to do is to involve students and staff in this journey, bringing it back to participatory design. How can we include them in the decisions we make regarding the integration of AI into education? And so we must ask, where to from here? For AI to truly serve our context, we must invest in contextual and relevant training data and models. See, for instance, the recent news out of Australia this week regarding opening domestic data to ensure that outputs are relevant to their context. We must further embed techno-critical pedagogies, establish ethical AI standards rooted in African values, and fostering cross-sector collaboration with industries, universities, governments, communities, and civil society. In closing, a last thought. True future readiness is not only about technical competency, but is also about critical engagement, contextual intelligence, and most critically, ethical responsibility. We need to think carefully and critically about the impact the technological choices we make will have on our students, and by virtue of this, our collective future that we are enabling them to create. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. And as you take your seat, I'm joined by a lineup of professors and doctors. I almost feel sort of undereducated to be sitting on this panel here. But I do feel this is a bit of my wheelhouse because I finished my master's last year. And this was a big discussion point because we'd lived through sort of 2 or 3 years of this debate. No AI, then some AI, and the original reaction was to, no, ban it all. Can't have any of it. It's like, plagiarism and all these things that had been part of the wheelhouse for a long time. And then it was, yes, you can use some of it, but not all of it. And this is kind of how the conversation went at the time. And then luckily, I finished before, I watched the rest of the wave hit the university. But it is a very important conversation because it almost really, I'd like to say, turns the whole education system upside down, because it almost just adds another layer of knowledge on top of what the internet was before that. So I'd like to start off the conversation maybe by asking you, Professor Yassim, is it too late for universities to compete with AI when it comes to knowledge delivery?
I actually think that universities, like you say, have taken a much more conservative sort of approach to AI, with the exception perhaps of the University of Johannesburg. And I particularly want to emphasize this because we've been pretty bold in the way in which we have approached the AI conversation. Not that we haven't been guarded around the ethics related to AI, but also what would be the ways in which we could leverage AI has been really part of the conversation, rather than how do we necessarily only police it and prevent our students from using it. So for example, if you take the idea that it's already available to our students, not only at our universities, but also at our schools and in our homes, it's pervasive in most aspects of our lives, and it has been for a very long time, although we only suddenly noticed it when ChatGPT was launched. It had been there all along. And I think with Professor Marwala being the 4IR guru, not just in South Africa, Africa and the world, but certainly his involvement as the Vice Chancellor promoted the idea of Fourth Industrial Revolution. And our own targets at the University of Johannesburg has really been centered around how do we leverage digital technologies a while back. So with AI coming in, I think we have chosen to embrace the AI revolution, but at the same time, how do we leverage it in an ethical and responsible fashion so that our students can be the kind of people that will be using AI, but at the same time, how do they use it to engage in lifelong learning? How do they engage it to expand their ideas? And more especially, how do they use it for social impact? And I think that that's really where our conversation has actually gone. So in essence, a lot of the professors at the University of Johannesburg have been working on how we redesign assessment, and that has been really a big part of the conversation, because it's not that our students are using AI, it's that professors are having to rethink how they assess students and what kind of assessment, what kind of assessment deliverables they would like to have, but at the same time teaching students to use AI responsibly.
Do you feel that this is the fastest you've ever had to react or move when it comes to a development in the education space? Because we know how it usually goes. There has to be a committee, there have to be frameworks, this has to be deliberated, there has to be best practice, we have to look at what's being done in the rest of the world, and these things can take a lot of time, but we don't really have that time to pontificate about, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense.
So I think that the pandemic gave us the sort of head start. And when the pandemic hit, it was a complete disruptor that floored us with the hard lockdowns, which meant that, like every other institution, we also had to respond. So remember that we have seen digital disruption coming. So I think that you are absolutely right. With its onset and the level of disruption and the speed at which technology is advancing, yes, we've had to respond to it at a far faster rate. But I think the readiness is there. And I think that that's the big question. Are we ready for this? Now, I want to be really bold, and I think what I've listened to today has been sort of a little bit more conservative in my opinion. I think Africa has a particular advantage to be able to lead the AI landscape. I don't think we're leveraging it to our fullest potential, but I think that with us banding together and working on an Africanized approach to AI, I think we can really not only use what others innovate and develop, but we can become innovators and developers in our own right. I think Africa has a lot to offer, and as you know, we are the future because we have the most amount of youth, whereas lots of other places are dealing with an aging generation. However, where we need a lot more investment is in how we actually approach education from the point of view of what would be the ways in which we could support our students to have the kind of adaptive expertise, to also have certain amount of fluidity in terms of being able to do whatever they have come to the university to do, but then to be a part of real life experiences. So for example, sitting in the audience right now is the Johannesburg Business School digital business team. And I work really closely with them, so I identify them very quickly. And that team are a group of young people who are already working with business solutions almost immediately. So I think you need to have some of what is traditionally university, but to have only that in the age of AI is shooting yourself in the foot. I think you do need to give students an opportunity to innovate, to be part of solutions, and to also conceptualize things in real life and not only just what looks good on a piece of paper.
Professor Smith, we know that from traditional qualifications and traditional degrees, there's quite a bit of process that we have to follow to get new curriculum into the system. I mean, it has to go through the policies, Department of Education. There's a lot of stakeholders and a lot of process we have to follow to get the accreditation right. And that is also a very, very long process. I mean, we're even seeing it with existing qualifications right now, that they haven't been updated in decades because it's just such a process to go through that. Are the policies and the processes adequate enough to be nimble enough for universities to be able to take AI on, as the professors highlighted as well, for Africa to be that leading continent when it comes to this technology?
Look, I don't think that we have to put forward redeveloping curricula, taking existing modules all the way through to new SACWA accreditations and so on. I think the opportunity exists right now to implement on a module-by-module basis the right tools for the context that you are teaching at the time. So I really don't think, I mean, it is an impediment if you are thinking of entire new curricula that you need to develop. That is going to be a problem. But it is not a problem at the level of the individual who teaches the module, as long as the person is open to the ideas and the possibilities and the creativity that emerges from access to new tools. I think within the existing university structures, there's plenty of opportunity to rejuvenate the system by bringing in, by requiring that students bring into their learning a new level of creativity, which wasn't available before. Now, you know, in many modules at universities, there used to be a barrier to, you know, I can speak from a scientific point of view. Biologists don't like mathematics, but mathematics has become accessible to students. What you need to do is speak in English to your computer, you get mathematical equations back, and it'll actually write the code that implements that for you. So it has made inaccessible avenues of research accessible to students today. The barrier is the academics, who many of them are, you know, middle age, my age and older, and they don't necessarily have the know-how or the wish to rejuvenate their way. It's more often the educator's way of thinking that needs to be rethought, not so much the students. Students are worried. They are absolutely worried. But I think if they stop sensing an hesitance from faculty to embrace the potential that AI has made available today, I think students will start to use it more creatively going forward. That's available today.
So it's not just a technological impediment, but there's also a zeitgeist or a generational impediment.
Absolutely.
That's kicking in here. And it's quite interesting that you mentioned that. I'm thinking back to an interview I saw recently now with Keanu Reeves, who performed famously in The Matrix. And he tells the story of how he was having dinner with one of the directors, and his kids walked in. They were 12, 13, and 15. And he said to him, "Oh, tell them about The Matrix. They'd never seen the movie. They never heard of it." So he explains to them that it's this movie where there's a guy who lives in what he thinks is the real world, but he realizes it's not the real world. It's actually, it's not real. The reality is actually somewhere else. It's outside of this sort of computer program. And he was kind of explaining the storyline to the kids. And the gist of it was that they couldn't quite understand what the issue was, if it was real or not. For them, they said, well, if the guy perceives that to be real, then that's the case. Where a lot of the discussion we've seen here today, especially about how should a book be authored, how should things be written, it's not real, it's not the way we've always done it. That seems to fall completely off the cliff with a whole new generation that says, well, what if we've never written books like this? Maybe this is the way we're going to write books. And it sounds like it will need a whole new set of academics to look at it in a different way to make it work. Does that sound all right, Dr. McLean? I see you nodding away. Or
No, I've been enjoying this. So what I find interesting, so obviously I work in a techno-critical space, so I have technological determinisms, either like extreme response on either side. And what we did was we threw out the idea of a policy. Everyone is pushing that 2023, 2024 moment, let's go for an AI policy. But the thing is, it's like developing a policy for Adobe. It's a tool, and it's a technology that's going to develop so rapidly. So actually what it needs is not an over-governance, but rather a set of principles, a growth mindset, an approach to this world that's going to change. And we must realize, ChatGPT now, we must realize that it's so rapid. Like if you go through like a university response, like developing a policy, it takes a year if you're lucky. And by then, the tech has outpaced us. So it's really about a mindset or a strategic framework, another way of doing things. And I think that's really where we need to focus with academic stuff.
The one issue is bringing it into the curriculum. The other thing is having the infrastructure to actually execute on this AI. And I think, Dr. Tsela, maybe to come to you as well on the infrastructure side. Is this something that universities need to be collaborating on? I mean, do we have one big cloud or one big server room that services the whole tertiary space? Or is this a matter that everyone builds their own server farms and their own AI and their own intelligence and sort of runs their own show?
Thank you for your question. Just want to recognize the telecom leadership and the minister and his team. All protocol observed. Look, I can take you from experience and what we do with telecom. We have telecom foundation where we look at the grassroots level. Where in May we had a lab for underprivileged. We believe grassroots level to just make sure infrastructure is there. Maybe a lot can be done. And then when we go to the universities, we got telecom industrial solution lab also collaborating with Wits University. We try by all means to make sure that we bring R&D and telco to say that's what we can leverage, can come up both hands and collaborate. But moving forward, also we got our 5 Center of Excellence after the student graduate, and also make sure that we enable with technology. But coming to mostly AI, a lot of talks in the morning, they were talking about large language models, but it's small language models. That, if universities don't have capacity and the budget, it's a new way that just arrived that they can leverage. They can start small on what they do best and able to make sure that AI manifests in the best way.
From the experience that you've had of rolling out some of these projects, they're not cheap exercises. Is this something that universities can realistically fund, or does this actually need a bigger intervention from a government level to actually make this possible?
I think we need all stakeholders to be part of it. Universities have stakeholders that from the tech side, because remember in COVID-19, we issued a lot of data. Why can't we do the same? With now saying AI literacy, let's do the same so that we make sure universities are capacitated and able to pick up the pace so that at the university environment this works.
Yeah. Professor Yassim, what are sort of the low-hanging fruit when it comes to AI right now? Or is it not a matter of trying to do this chronologically? Is it a matter of just trying to cover as much ground as possible and integrate as much as possible sooner rather than later?
I think the landscape of AI is changing rapidly. So if you think of what we knew about AI a year ago compared to what we know about it right now, and with quantum computing and all kinds of other developments in the AI space, I think that we are in a place of rapid change, which means then that if we continue to invest in something for a very long time, we're going to be left on the back foot. So my take on it is that I think we have to engage with the disruption. We have to keep on the pulse of development and change, and that's really what universities are doing. But the low-hanging fruit that you speak of is that any access to AI is available in your everyday life anyway. So your phone, for example, could be as easy as it is with just your WhatsApp function that everybody uses. There's already AI built into that versus some of the more developed tools. The thing that right now that we have to pay attention to, and I think I'm going to agree completely with DJ here, is how do we help people to embrace the disruption? How do we help them to adapt to it? And how do we help them bring the disruption into the classroom and co-create with students? Because students also bring digital intelligences that professors can draw on. So you can create certain learning pathways with your students, but that requires you to also let go of the kind of control that we were so privileged to have in terms of knowledge and in terms of expertise. And there are times when you are going to have to say, I too will have to learn. Very recently with the new launch of some of the video tools, I used to teach digital storytelling in a number of my classes. And previously the tools were quite cumbersome and you had to do a lot of editing and all kinds of other things. These days with text, these amazing videos can be produced, but it's going to be up to all of the stakeholders to buy into the idea that we can leverage this tool. And I think once everybody's on the same page with that, and I would also say that we bring others along, deal with the people that are having some kind of resistance to this, engage with them, because the dissenting voice also has important information. And so I think that we need to continue the conversation on it, but AI is going to be the disruptor going forward in ways that we can only have imagined. And some of the ways we could have not really imagined. So we are preparing our students for a future that we don't even know exists. The World Jobs Report that came out in 2025, indicated some pretty startling statistics around what jobs will no longer exist in the near future and what new opportunities might there be. So my colleagues are very correct in saying that we are going to have to adapt to it by looking at what we have and not having long drawn-out processes for change, but rather revisualizing and repurposing what we have by embracing some of these changes, but also developing our students' mindset so they also can embrace this future of the unknown, a future that is disruptive, so that when they go into workspaces, they can be the kind of developers of change that could have societal impact.
Dr. McLean, does the AI integration into education not put us into an even further divide between those who have access and those who don't? We really have the situation in education to a greater or lesser extent, but does the technology not create a bigger gap, or is there an opportunity for this to actually close that gap by almost democratizing access to knowledge and access to these processes?
It is a complex issue, so it's at risk of both. Well, not at risk if it closes it. So it is about being aware of what this reality is. So I want to, sorry, just a little weasel. But I think we need to probably change our mindset around the idea of AI as a disruptor. AI is our reality now. And I think once we get into that space, the mindset starts to shift. So we're no longer in this chaotic response. We go into, okay, this is what we're living with, and how do we work with this now? Otherwise, we're going to always be, jolting whenever something shifts. Let's pretend we're at sea. You're going to have to get sea legs. And also, I think, to an earlier question, I think we need a collective response. As we were all speaking about a bit earlier, not over here, is that there's no AI expert. I think it's about a collective response. We need to move into that space. And yes, academia asks us to focus on our individual institutions, but there is an opportunity for a working group, a way of rethinking this. And I think that is where we need to be. And that includes looking at issues around the digital divide, for instance. And not only at tertiary, we need to be thinking about primary and secondary. What does that look like? How are pupils, learners equipped from the get-go? And I think that definitely requires a bigger intervention, and that is where we need to call in government for support.
Professor Smith, is it a matter of universities saying, it doesn't matter what the technology is. I mean, we don't know what's around the corner in the next 6 months. We need to stick to our knitting as universities and just ensure that whatever we do and whatever that is, we need to make sure it's sound, it delivers to industry what it needs to deliver, and we make sure that we continue to do what we've done for the last 100 years, which is, make sure that we've got things that are credible, that are accredited, and we're delivering a workforce that is whatever the latest technology is and is on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as far as the future of universities is concerned, I'm not, often you would hear doomsayers say that many of our jobs are going to be replaced. I think in academia we're very safe. I think that the role of academia is to train the people, say PhD level students, who are able to ask AI PhD level questions in order to get PhD level answers out of it. That's what we need to continue doing. Because, often you would read that AI is already performing at the level of a sort of advanced PhD student or a medical doctor or the top lawyer. But it does require that you ask the right questions. You're not going to get a 13-year-old person asking a question of AI and getting a PhD level answer back. It requires that you know the questions that you need to ask. You need to understand where the gaps are, where the opportunities are, where your curiosity sits. And it's our curiosity that needs to be aligned with what's happening in the world. It's not AI. AI's curiosity is not aligned with what's happening in the world out there. That is going to be a sole human character going forward. We need to reconsider what it means for us to be human. Humans have always had a relationship with knowledge. That's the reason why humans have become so numerous. But knowledge isn't something that you can go off and walk in the field and pick them and put them in a basket. It's something that thoughtful, creative people generate. That is going to be the role of academia going forward, and that is where we would never want to take our eyes off the ball, is to ensure that we have graduates who are able to engage with AI in a way that we're going to get the best value for our level of inquiry out of the system.
So the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's not about getting better questions. It's not about getting better answers. It's about asking better questions.
It's always about asking better questions.
Yeah. Are you concerned that at some point AI might make any sort of tertiary process obsolete? Could it get to a point where, at some point, even if you have an accredited degree, it might not carry as much weight as, any other sort of qualification that might come along that might be AI-powered?
Yeah, look, I mean, in many aspects of academia that I do hope would go extinct overnight, like administration, for instance, the bureaucrats. I think there's a very good role for AI in those kinds of systems. It would keep the system running optimally and to the best in a manner that serves academia. I think as far as our graduates are concerned, I don't think it's going to make, at least in my field, the type of students that we want to train. There's always going to be people who want to be biologists. There's not going to be computers walking around the field asking interesting questions about some observation around a turtle, for instance. Only humans can do that. Biology is by nature something that's human. It's about humans. It's about humans' place in the world. Only people are able to ask those questions. And what I think we need to continue doing is to rejuvenate what it means to be a person who keeps their eyes on the world. AI is not going to be able to replace that, and as long as those are the careers that we value going forward, then there will always be an opportunity for people to be around.
Are you already seeing any shifts in the way students are approaching their tertiary qualifications? I know earlier on, Fifi mentioned she had someone in her family who was wanting to do accounting, and she said, oh no, don't do accounting, that's going to be out of business in a couple of years' time. I mean, are you really seeing students coming to universities saying, you know, I'm not interested in any of these subjects, and you're suddenly having an onslaught of people studying whatever it is? I mean, I was reading the other day, bartenders are never going to go out of fashion. I see I saw that the other day. There's a thing in Hong Kong at the airport. They've got a robot that makes cocktails for you. So that's already outdated. But are you seeing students sort of? Is there a shift in the way subjects are being chosen now?
I see a shift in students' interest. I think students have become a lot more interested in data as the currency that drives the world today. And there's been a big growing interest even in biological sciences where, you know, my role is to teach statistics, data analysis, data science, those kinds of things. And the number of students who come to biology to learn that as a skill, as an exit level skill, they have increased. But, you know, it's... I don't think it has changed much. It's too soon to say that, to make a judgment on whether people's interest in terms of what they want to study coming to university has changed. I don't think that has happened yet. I don't have any evidence or data to suggest that. What I can say is that it's definitely approached, or it's given those students who are currently sitting in our modules, it's given them a voice. Often people come to university and they are not fluent in English. But because of the magic that AI works on language, you can see students' ideas clearly coming out in essays. I have seen so many more impactful essays this year. Obviously, it's been worked through AI systems, but it's their voice. You can see it's their voice because it talks to the individual person in a way that they would communicate with you. So it has given people an outlet to say things that previously were entirely misunderstood. I think that's been one of the amazing things of AI today. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to concur with Prof. what he said. Even though I'm in corporate, I'm also affiliated to the University of South Africa, Graduate School of Leadership in Midrand. Having to graduate PhD students, you see, we have to look at beyond the content. We need to look at the original ideas, how they went through, and since that's the justification of it, and able to see where the new knowledge is coming from. Because at university, they use AI anyway. So you need to understand that they are submitting this research, and what is it that you want to take from it, and what is it that there's new knowledge that is coming from there.
So the knowledge is one part, but what we really want to see is that critical thinking. It's the process that remains the same, irrespective of if it's AI or a book or whatever.
You can tell from the flow if it's jumbled up from AI, but now remember, it's always the person first, AI, and lastly the person. We always say leverage AI as an assistant, but put your organic, original ideas, they have to flow. Because as a supervisor, you have that eye to say you need to safeguard all this, because it can have to go further to turn it in to see what is the score for plagiarism.
On the African continent, how is South Africa positioned? Are we leading the way in terms of this kind of technology and the way we're approaching it, or are there other players on the continent that seem to be getting it together faster than we are?
South Africa is moving ahead. I mean, obviously, East Africa is being sponsored by international organization. It's a lot happening in East Africa. But South Africa on its own, it has a lot of players in terms of language NLP. We do have 11 languages, and I mean, the professors from the University of Pretoria, they do have pushing to see that how AI, in terms of language, to cater for everyone, because we understand when our students come to universities, the English is not that perfect. But right now we can leverage it, say, learn on your own capacity, because it starts with an individual, and then use this as an assistant, rather than having to always have the traditional way that I need to learn, firstly, how to communicate in the language of research, which is already difficult. You can always do that on your own capacity.
Tell me about it. That academic writing almost killed me. Dr. Yasiba, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned, I think we just spoke about, Professor Smith spoke about the administration. I mean, if we could get rid of the administration part with AI, wouldn't that be fantastic? How much are universities actually using AI in the background? Because I heard an interesting radio interview where somebody was saying, well, you know, students are being criticized for using AI in their assignments, but the universities are using AI to mark those assignments, so it's AI speaking to AI. Is that the case, or is that a little bit of fantasy there?
I think that people are experimenting on all levels. And the administrative part of it, I completely concur. I mean, that would really free up a lot of time to do very meaningful work. I think that as much students are experimenting with AI and using it to enhance their writing or whatever assessments that they have, I think it's how we are guiding our students on the one hand, but at the same time, I think we do need to declare to our students that we're also in a space of experimentation. We're also seeing what would be the ways in which AI can be leveraged. So give you a quick example. In terms of marking, if you were to work with AI to help you mark a number of different scripts, my own personal experience has been, because we do it manually, but we also use the AI to kind of see how we have done manually, but then what is the AI doing? The AI almost never ever judges, even subjectively, in the correct band, so we're not close when we grade students. But the feedback that AI gives is much better than the feedback that I would be able to give, for example. So I think that, again, it's about the collaboration that we're trying to create here. And I think if you tell your students don't use it at all, don't teach them how to use it responsibly, and don't enable them and the parts that they need enabling, like, for example, communicating their ideas in a language that they may not be proficient in and so forth, then I think we are then barring them from using it, but then we're going ahead to experiment. And I think that we need to be open about these conversations. What does feedback mean to our students? It gives them the kind of information that will allow them to improve, to be critical about the work that they're doing, and to be thinking about the kind of responses that they're giving in meaningful ways. And as a lecturer, if I'm using AI to help me to give the kind of feedback that would be meaningful for the student, but at the same time enabling my student to use whatever AI tools that they need to personalize their own learning, but also at the same time to be really confident and proud of their assessment. So I think it's about how we're designing assessment that really is called to question here. So if we're expecting a traditional approach to assessment, then definitely we're going to have to police that. But if you're looking at a way in which you incorporate AI into whatever tasks you are giving your students in a way that is meaningful for their learning, but also as a partner and a collaborator and a thinking partner for them, then I think we are sort of getting into a space where we are leveraging AI and not misusing it. There are ethical boundaries, like, for example, personal information and the popular conversations that have been going rampant. And there are other pieces that we do need to sensitize our students to and ourselves to. For example, when we do research in AI, what are the ethical dimensions do we need conversations about? because right now I don't think there's a blueprint. There is a group of people led by the University of Canterbury, for example, that's looking into what would be the ways that we could approach an ethics around AI. And again, I would agree completely that we don't have these blueprints. These are shifting sands, and we're going to have to respond to it as we go along. I work in the area of leadership development. I work with a lot of school principals and people who would be, educational leaders. And we often ask ourselves, how successful has our traditional programs been in terms of developing the kind of leaders that our schools need? And if we are to really do an introspection into that, we will see that we have probably not done too well. Yeah. But at the moment, I'm experimenting with AI in leadership development. How do I enable future leaders to collaborate with AI, to use it and leverage it as a thinking partner, to be coached and mentored by somebody who is there with you all the time? And what would that kind of development mean, for our schools today? And from the little experiments that we've done, Finland is already doing this work, and we are collaborating with them. They are using a lot more AI-directed and AI-supportive learning. But in a South African context and African context, agency is one of the critical elements of leadership. We need leaders who can display agency, which means we need a different kind of AI tool. And the kind of AI that I'm busy working with students to develop is centered around AI-empowered learning. And so we are all experimenting with this. I don't think that there's anybody who is not. Whether you're talking from the student cohort, whether you're talking from the leadership cohort, or you're talking from the lecturer cohort, we are all experimenting with this. The thing is that, why do we need to hide this? Why don't we be open about it? Why don't we share our experiments with each other? And I think it's about building bridges with each other too. Universities have for too long maybe worked in silos. How do we build these bridges so we can leverage from each other the developments that are taking place?
Okay, that's great. I think that's cool. We're all busy experimenting. Dr. McLean, I'll come to you just now. If there's any questions in the audience, I'd ask you to raise your hand. We're going to get a microphone to you. I'm going to come to you. Dr. McLean, you wanted to weigh in on this.
So what I think we need to also move to is, there's almost like a shame around using AI. And if we just move into being a nerd, Dignam 2019's responsible use of AI, it's about accountability, responsibility, and transparency. And if we can get to that space, we can then move into training and development with staff where we can say, all right, let's move towards an AI maturity. I think about a friend wanted feedback on a PhD proposal, and I just didn't have time. So I ran through 2 prompts, and the one was, give me an enabling, kind, gentle, holding response, and I put a whole lot of other stuff into it, and give me the most critical feedback you could ever give. And knowing that you have to include that in your prompt, for instance. So if you haven't trained, the tool that you're using when you're assessing students' assessments, assignments, you might end up with the meanest AI response. And just knowing that you need to do that level of prompt, not just, here's the rubric, here's the assessment, give me feedback, but rather doing this is the tone that I would use, and so that thinking partner, I think, really is helpful, almost like a personal assistant, teaching assistant on the side. I do want to say that there is a group, and I know it's fairly new, but the community of practice around digital transformation, run by SARO, the Southern African Regional Universities Association, would be a great space to get involved in. We're involved there. And they're doing a lot of the thinking around this and asking those critical questions. So there is already this happening in a collective, meaningful way for SADC, at least.
Okay, great. Sorry, I've got to quick go to this question. If you just excuse me, where's the? Oh, there we go. Have you got a microphone there?
It's here.
Where?
You are a panelist. You are no, I'm joking. So I just want to touch on a few points. We're talking about accessibility, we're talking about inclusivity, we're talking about crossing borders, we're talking about universities collaborating. What are we doing as leaders and as South Africa or Southern Africa of building our own LLM? And when I say our own LLM, we are basically buying tokens and sending US dollars out of this country to OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, wherever those players are. What are we doing to put our own cluster of hardware down in a central place where universities can tap into, where universities can build private LLMs to serve their objective, and where we can make it accessible to anybody in South Africa. Someone mentioned earlier on USSD, impoverished areas, rural. We are exposing our data, we are sending money out of our country, and we are not monetizing the tokenized economy. What's the panel's thoughts on that?
Cool. Okay, cool. I think we got the gist of it. So what are we doing? Okay, some claps. Yes, clap. All right. What are we doing? Actually, if you stick around, we're doing a fireside chat on that a little bit later today about the infrastructure conversation. But let me have the academia weigh in on this as well. So if I can just give you each maybe just one comment on that, or if somebody feels very passionate about that topic, maybe I'll give one of you and then we'll wrap it up. You're nodding, so yeah, let's go with you.
So I think that the gentleman's absolutely right, because I'm thinking of the development work that we're doing, and we're using the AI Foundry, Microsoft Azure space to do that. We've had Microsoft come in to also help us to sort of understand some of their products and so forth. So right now, I think the R&D around this needs to be strengthened within our own country, and I really do take the point on board. So one of the things that I take away from that comment is to go off and look at maybe South African platforms or African platforms that maybe I haven't been exposed to, but never really dawned on me to do so. So thank you for that.
Okay, I know. As I said, we're gonna have a fireside chat about that as well a bit later on. So please stick around for that because we're gonna go into that a little bit more in depth. If I can just quickly ask my panelists as we wrap it up, starting with you, Dr. McLean, if you want to leave us with one final thought, one sentence, one chat GPT prompt on AI in academia, what would that be?
We need to keep bringing it home. So bringing it home. So looking at Global South regional knowledge, that question, that comment was absolutely on point. And really thinking about it, honestly, I know I harp on it about a lot in my work, but it's an ethics of care. How do we show that we actually care about our students, about our future? And the way to do that is to keep bringing it home.
Okay, Professor Smith?
Thank you, yes. So what I would say is that we do need to, whenever we have AI conversations, we talk about, we need to get students to think more critically and ask better questions and so on, but we mustn't take our eye off the ball, which is knowledge itself. Most of us who sit in this room went to university or were educated in a time where we had to have personal possession of a body of knowledge that we could call our own. Yeah. We must not forget that. Okay. We must not forget that. Knowledge is absolutely foundational, and we have to take ownership of it again.
Scientia potentia, I think it is in Latin. I think knowledge is power. Professor Yassine?
So for me, I think that I want to piggyback on my colleague there to say that we need to Africanize AI. We need to embrace it, bring it on board, and we need to lead. Okay,
I feel like they've lined up the ball for you for a penalty shootout. Bringing AI to Africa, making it our own. Dr. Ditsela, is that your feeling as well, or have you got one more to throw into the mix?
There's a shift. Nowadays, when you ask kids, they don't say, I learned from YouTube, because AI chatbot pop-ups from Android to Microsoft. But now we go to varsity, we need to emphasize AI literacy. As much as we do end-user computing where everyone starts typing in Word and Excel and what, we need to have that module literacy so that we educate properly to the use and to leverage.
Fantastic. Please give my panel a big round of applause, talking about AI in education. Thank you so much to you. Thank you for making the time. Thank you so much.